This is Caleb Owens with the Insurance Experience. My guest today is Stacey Giulianti. Stacey is going to talk to us about the insurance market in Florida. Stacey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on your show. I'm a big fan of you and the show, so I'm ready to rock and roll today.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so Stacey, tell me about yourself.
Well, I've been an insurance lawyer and I'm also an accredited claims adjuster. I've been in the business for 30 years. Um, I started off my career as a young lawyer, and for the first 12 years of my career, I actually was a plaintiff's lawyer, meaning I represented consumers, policyholders, against insurance companies. So if they wouldn't pay the full amount, or I felt there was a wrongful denial, anything of that nature, I would take the insurance company to task. And so for the last 18 years after that, 12 plus 18 is 30. I've been chief legal officer of Florida Peninsula Insurance Company, and we also own a subsidiary, Edison Insurance Company, and both are homeowners insurance companies. So we sell homeowners, renters, and condo unit coverage only within the state of Florida, although we're licensed in a couple other states. Right now, it's Florida only, and that's our specialty.
Wow, wow, that's very impressive. So, what inspired you to pursue this career, this legal field within the insurance industry? What got you started with this?
You know, it's an interesting question because I actually started off, my undergraduate degree is in television and film. So I wanted to be like a film director. I wanted to be like a Spielberg. And then I realized very quickly that I have limited talent for anything of that nature. Okay? No creativity at all. However, I actually like speaking and I like writing. And I said, so how could I use speaking and writing? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to law school. So I ended up going to law school. And after I got out, I started working. My first year was for like the biggest law firm in South Florida. It was big. And I started working on a bunch of different like corporate files. And then I started working on some insurance issues for some large national insurance carriers. And I found the topics and the legal items were really interesting because most people would think insurance is boring. And the problem is maybe insurance itself might be, but insurance deals with everything. Okay. If a rocket ship, is going to take a satellite to space
Right.
and blows up, there might be insurance coverage. So you're dealing
Exactly.
with rocket insurance, asteroid insurance. There's so much involved in insurance that's not just, ma'am, would you like to buy some insurance? It's like, yes, that's great. I love sales. Okay. We
Right.
live here for sales. But I also like the legal issues. And so when I started getting involved in that, and at first it was from the individual consumer standpoint, I found that there are so many nuances that it just sucked me in. And I said, I got to get in here to fight for justice, whether it's for the consumer or now whether it's for the insurance company, kind of trying to find a middle ground. I found that to be really exciting and interesting, and that drew me in.
Wow, wow, that's very impressive, and you make a good point. And it is exciting. There's so many different things that are insured. It's almost everything that we do. We don't even think about it, but everything is insured, and it's all over the place, and it can be a very exciting industry.
I mean, look,
So
even on
go
your
ahead.
side, right? If someone needs housing, I mean,
That's right.
look, is it a fire? Is it a catastrophe? Is it thousands of people? Is it, an asteroid strike? Is it, a robot uprising? Ida, zombies, who the heck knows? But they're going to need housing. They're going to
That's
need
right.
insurance coverage. And so all of these items come. And so it's not just a routine, mundane job. You're really out there helping people at their worst time when they really need
Right.
something.
You couldn't have said it better. We've seen the mix, all kinds of different people that, what we really focus on is people that are standing by the side of the road. That family that's had a house burned down or whatever it is, and they're by the side of the road because the house just literally burned down. That's what we're really there for. We really go into action for those people like that.
It's
So
absolutely true. It's what we're
tell
there
me
for.
about tell me about Florida Peninsula Insurance Company and how you founded this company, how you got it started.
I'm one of the co-founders of Florida Peninsula, and basically, as I said, I was a consumer lawyer, and I met Clint Strouk. He's currently the president of the company. He was an Allstate agent for about 17 or 18 years at the time, and this was in the early 2000s, I think in 2002. And he said, why don't we start an insurance company? You know the law. I know the sales and kind of the field underwriting. Let's find some people who have actual money, because he was an agent and I was a lawyer, and so we did okay, but we certainly didn't have 10 million, $20 million to stick into an insurance company at that time. But we said, let's try to put together a business plan. And so, to make kind of a long story short, we got together for maybe a year and a half every week and put together a business plan. And at the time in Florida, there were hundreds of thousands of unplaced insurance policies. A lot of states have this. They have fair plans or joint underwriting associations. In Florida now, it's called Citizens. Citizens Property Insurance is not actually a private company per se. It's really an arm of the government, more or less. It's policies that nobody else wants for whatever reason it is. The problem is there are good policies in there, especially as it grows. So you always have policies that nobody wants because it's just really an old roof, or there's a car on blocks out in front. I mean, there's reasons for it. But then there's a ton of them. They're actually really good policies that make economic sense. And so we looked at those along with two of our other partners who are still with us. And, they were MBAs from a really high-end school in Boston that will remain nameless, Harvard. And so they looked at it. They laughed at our business plan. They said, this is the most ridiculous thing, but let's look at it even more. And they realized it was true. You could get the government to give you these policies, then you could grow by selling. So you had a base of policies all ready to go. You didn't have to start from onesies, twosies. And they said, but we really need some kind of old school people with gray hair. I mean, now I've got gray, but back, 18 years ago, I didn't have as much. And we hired two guys that basically joined us as partners, as co-founders. One of them had been the president of Prudential Property, Prudential PNC, and the other one had been the CFO of Aetna Personal Lines, which is about $2 billion a year in annual premium back then. And so those guys joined us as kind of the gray hairs to shepherd us through the state and get everything set up. And so the six of us were off to the races. And in 2005, we launched Florida Peninsula. And we started with, I'm not 100% sure, but I want to say 30 or 40,000 customers, wow. Which was probably around $45 million at the time. Since then, we've grown to this year, end of this year, will be $750 million in annual premium, total annual revenue. We've got two companies, as I said, Florida Peninsula Insurance and Edison Insurance Company. We've got a couple of other subsidiaries as well, including a claims company that does some of our claims, as well as some insurance analytical subsidiaries that kind of do our data and our IT analysis for us. And so we've really grown this into something that is much bigger than it is. We're still Florida only, and we're still residential property company, but that's what we did. We got it together, and from an idea on a napkin, 17 years, 18 years later, we've got a one heck of a fun company.
I like how you describe it. One heck of a fun company. That's really unusual in the insurance market. It's just different. It's really nice to hear, though.
Thank you.
So with that, what are some of the biggest legal challenges facing the insurance industry today?
Every state is different. So depending on where someone is watching this or where they do business in, obviously every state has their differences. Some of the smaller states have obviously some, not always easier, but with less people comes less problems. Florida is a big state, one of the largest in the country. Something between 18 and 20 million people living in Florida, I believe, if I'm correct about that, or is it? Well, anyway, there's a lot of people living in Florida.
Okay? I think recently overtook New York as well.
Yeah, exactly,
so right.
Exactly. And so we've got a lot of people living here, a lot of issues, a lot of fraud, which is some of the problem. But in Florida, the legal issues from litigation. Mm-hmm. Florida has about 8% of the homeowners claims in the country. So 8% of all homeowners claims in the U.S. are Florida homeowners claims. But we have 76% of America's homeowners litigation. Wow. 8% of the claims, over 3/4 of the insurance litigation.
Some math is way off.
The math is way off. And so that's why Florida has so many problems with affordability. I mean, look, there's supply chain issues. There was COVID. There's inflation. A lot of that has nothing to do with insurance companies. This has something to do with us in the sense that the people who come after us, and of the vast majority, it's not really that we've denied a claim. It's that they want more money. And instead of, calling us and resolving something and working with the contractors, they file a lawsuit. Why? Because up until recently, and we'll talk about that, if you got even $1 basically more than whatever we had offered, you get all your attorney's fees. So totally
Okay.
separately. So let's say we've had claims where, we fought it, we thought we were right, so we're proving that we weren't right. And so maybe it was a $10,000 claim and we underpaid it, let's say arguably by $10,000. We may pay $500,000 to $1 million in attorney's fees.
Wow.
That doesn't come out of
Wow.
my pocket. That comes out of the policyholder's pockets. That's
That's
ridiculous.
crazy.
So
Yeah.
policyholders are paying for that instead of somebody calling us up and saying, listen, you gave us 5, we want 15, and we try to resolve it with the help of adjusters and contractors and sitting
Right.
down. They don't use that process. Instead, they filed a lawsuit immediately because they knew that once you settled with them, they would get attorney's fees. And even if it's quickly settled, they're getting $5,000 or $10,000 on top of what the claim was. And that kind of false and kind of frankly crazy incentives is what was part of the reason driving the Florida market in the wrong direction.
So, I mean, not to not to go down on attorneys or speak negatively about them, but in that sense, it doesn't necessarily seem like individual homeowners are sitting around conspiring this whole thing. It honestly seems like attorneys would be the ones kind of pursuing this. Am I correct with that thinking?
It is, and it's actually a relatively small number of attorneys that abused it. And so, of course, there were reasons that somebody should go after an insurance company. I did it, but it's not 76% of the
Right.
time when you have 8% of the claims. That's just not. It's not mathematically, and it's not realistically feasible. That's just not true. And so, it's important that there be a mechanism, but that it's not abused. Part of it wasn't. You're right. It wasn't the individuals. There were attorney issues involved. But also at the time, there was what we call AOB or assignment of benefit. And
Mhm.
so some contractor who was also not a good contractor, I know a lot of great contractors, but some people who wanted to abuse the system would get the homeowner to sign this assignment. So they would take over the right to make a claim on your policy for that damage. And so they would say, and they wouldn't even necessarily tell the homeowner. They would say, yeah, we're putting in a claim for $100,000 worth of damage, where if you ask the homeowner, it might have been $15,000 in damage. And so
Wow.
we say, listen, we're not going to pay 100. Why don't we pay you, whatever it is, the 15? Nope, filing a lawsuit. And so
Wow.
it was outside the homeowner's knowledge. They didn't even really have to be involved
Oh,
because
wow.
they had assigned or given the right to go after the insurance company, the rights under their policy to a contractor, to an emergency, services mitigation vendor, to a board up company, a tarping company, or somebody like that. And so while there may be a need for that in the law, once again, people found a way to abuse it,
Mhm.
and it was just geometrically higher than it should have been in a regular market environment.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So that kind of leads me to my next question. Just talking about this Florida State Bill 2A. That's kind of like this giant elephant in the room. I've heard so much on both sides of this story,
Yep.
so I'd love to hear your opinion of this.
I think, first of all, from both sides, I think it was a fair kind of middle ground. They could have made it even stronger. I
Wow.
think the legislature and the governor really stepped up and did something finally for real. Because I will tell you something, a lot of times when the legislature does something, because it's the spirit of compromise, and I'm not against compromise, but when you compromise too much, you get a bill that doesn't help anybody. You
Mm.
get a bill that politicians can say, I did something, and he or she didn't do much of anything, and it doesn't help anybody.
Right.
That's typically what happens in government, and that's unfortunate. It doesn't always happen. Okay, legislature solved the sinkhole issue we were having a number of years ago. They did a great job, and I give them kudos at that time. I give them kudos now because they were able to cut the head off this five-headed hydra, especially the litigation. So the law did a bunch of things. One of the things it did is it said no attorney's fees automatically. Okay, there are still ways to get fees under the law if you're denied a claim. It's not all gone, but
Mm.
this automatic, you beat me, even if we settle, you get attorney's fees, and maybe bad faith, and maybe a double or tripling of whatever the fees are. That's out the window. That doesn't exist
Oh,
anymore.
okay.
So they've taken that away. so that people can actually talk and try to solve things. They've also taken away the assignment of benefits. So now, if you've got a problem or you have a bill, you come to us. It's not the air conditioning repair person coming to us and trying to triple the bill because, they want to try to settle for something or then sue us. That was taken away. You can still put in those bills, but it has to come from the homeowner, and the homeowner has to know about it. So that's important. What the state also did on the other side is said, listen, insurance companies normally have 90 days to close a claim file, to pay it, deny it, whatever they want to do with that claim. They've got to do a full investigation in 90 days. The state said, no. You want some of these things, but we're going to make it better for the consumer and for the carriers. We're going to make you have to close a file within 60 days. So they cut it down by a whole third. So instead of 90 days, you've got 60 days to close the claim. Now, I will say most carriers can close a claim in 3 weeks, maybe less. But there are complicated claims. There are claims where there's flooding and wind, and you've got to figure out what the difference was. There's all kinds of issues. Fire cases where there may be arson, and you've got to spend, weeks and weeks with an investigator. These things happen. So you've got 60 days. So they've cut that down. In addition, you've got to respond to people. I believe instead of 14 days, if they contact you in writing, you've got to contact them back within 7 days. Again, it was 2 weeks. Now it's down to 1 week. So they made some changes that I think were really positive, both for the consumers and for the insurance company. The last one that I would bring up is that it used to be that you could make a claim, honestly, at one point it was like 3 years after the loss. Okay. And then they reduced it, but now they've reduced it again to 1 year. So you've got 1 year after a loss, any kind of loss. You've got 1 year to make that report to the insurance company. I think that's fair. It's not fair to wait 2, 3, 4 years.
That's crazy.
And people do it all the time. Wow. I mean, if you looked at our chart, the day before the third, or the month before the third year was up on Hurricane Irma, you just saw the lawsuits and the claims come in crazy because people wanted to get their claim or their lawsuit in before the deadline. Where were they for 3 years? What was going on?
Years.
And while there could be legitimate reasons, there's not that many legitimate reasons. And so bringing it within a year makes absolute sense. Check your house, hire somebody. If you can't get on the roof, get someone to come do it. The insurance adjuster will come out. If you think there's damage, you make a claim. Again, so those are things that I think are really going to be helpful, both to stabilize the market as well as give the consumer some additional rights.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. Now, you're absolutely correct. That's really interesting. And so, like you're saying as well, that they're definitely compromising by saying it's not just all one-sided and just all for the insurance company side. It's kind of, both sides. They definitely compromise on, to the consumer as well. And it's really interesting, your point is that you're incentivizing people to actually file a lawsuit. It's not just a matter of these are just, natural, lawsuits that are coming out of insurance companies not paying a fair share. These are, lawsuits that are being encouraged, incentivized by people and contractors to come after the insurance company, starting to make a lot more sense to where that 76% is coming from.
Well, think about it this way. We have what's called the American rule. The American rule generally says everybody pays for their own legal fees, unlike the British rule in which the loser pays attorney's fees. But we don't have that. We have the American rule. Unless there's a law that changes it, like there was in Florida, you pay your own attorney's fees. And it helps incentivize settlements and early closure. So, for instance, let's say you and I are out somewhere, and you wouldn't, because Caleb, you're a nice guy. But let's say you punch me in the face and you caused injury.
Okay.
I don't get attorney's fees for that. I can sue you and say I was out of work, I have hospital bills, I've got pain and suffering, I want $10,000 from you. Right. And if you don't pay me the 10, I can't sue you and then whatever I get when I win or settle, and then my attorney gets another $100,000. That's not how it works. 10 is what I'm going to get. Right. Okay. So instead of for me waiting years and for you having to hire somebody and pay, you might say, Stacey, listen, I'm sorry. We were having a good time. We were having a little wild turkey. You know what I'm saying? Not that either of us have had a little bourbon, but maybe now and then. Right. And And so you say, how about if I pay you 5,000? I say, come on, look, I got hospital bills, 7,500. Boom,
Right.
done. We settle it. There's no extra fees. There's no incentive for you to keep it going for years and years like there was under that other law. There was
Mhm.
no incentive to settle it quickly because the longer you went, as long as you didn't lose, and most of these cases are settled because the risk is so high, you end up with this tail and all of these attorneys' fees. And so by solving that, not only do you help the insurance companies understand their risk better, but you take less money out of the consumer's pockets because all the money that insurance companies have, it's not a magical, pit of money. It all comes from consumers. And so
Right.
if our costs go up, your costs go up. If our costs go down, your costs go down. Very simple. And the more our costs go down, the more competitive we are and the more policies we can sell. So we want the lowest price because I want to beat the pants off of the other guys selling insurance. I want them to be higher. I do a better job. I can sell for 10% less and I have a good product. You'll buy from Florida Peninsula.
I like that. I like how you parlayed into that. That's you have a good point. It's not just a matter of money just coming from another guy or from somebody else. This is all Floridians, money. This is all Floridians who are paying their insurance money, and you're increasing the cost for everybody by doing that. Some bad actors, be it contractors or whoever it is, are increasing the costs, and so it drives up the costs all the way across the board in Florida. And so this new law, hopefully, if it does everything just like you're stating, it should over time you start to see a lowering of that to where that 76 number comes down to, let's say, closer to the 8%, that it actually makes up. Maybe it doesn't get down 8, but 15 or 12 would be preferable, I'm sure, to a lot of people in Florida. And then you should start seeing the cost come down, you think, as well, over the course of years.
Absolutely. Again, the costs on the insurance side, I can't do anything about inflation
Right.
or, like I said, supply side problems, wood coming from China or South America and the ships are charging more. I can't do anything about that. But in terms of kind of the losses and the frequency and, how much our internal costs are, if we can keep lawsuits down to the ones that are absolutely necessary, whatever the dispute is, we can try to resolve them. If we can respond quicker, if we can have the claims come in, like I said, instead of 3 years after or 2 years after a storm or a fire or a water break, it comes in within 12 months. It's going to help everybody and it's going to allow us to be more competitive and to lower the price for people. At the very least, even if it goes up from inflation, we don't want it to go up also from the problems in the insurance field. And so at least we can keep a lid on the areas that we have control over, even if we can't keep a lid on some of those other areas. That's the government, that's printing money. We could have that conversation as well. But
Right.
now we want to make sure that we're able to save every dime we can for our customers because every dime we save makes me more competitive and lets me sell more policies as opposed to the competition.
Wow, I like that. I like that. Okay, so with that, um, how does your company approach this risk management? I mean, more than what you've already told me, how do you approach risk management and minimizing the legal liability where you're at now?
Yeah, it's a fabulous question. Risk management. We have a chief risk officer who used to work for Aon, which is a big reinsurance and kind of analytical brokerage house that works with insurance companies. And so he joined us as our chief risk officer a few years ago. Again, had 20 years of experience in Aon and basically brought on an analytical team as well. Really, really smart people, a lot smarter than me as a lawyer. And they're able to kind of look at the data and figure out where do we want to write? Again, maybe how far from the coast, how close to the water, how close to a lake. Where are we? Where in certain areas that's closer to wildfire risk, and so do we want to be in those areas? And if so, how far or how close? We take a look at how far the nearest fire hydrant is. When we first started this company,
Wow.
we took policies from citizens. We had a house that burned down on an island and there was no fire extinguisher there. I don't know if you know, but they use boats. They use boats that suck up the lake water and they shoot it
Wow.
in the house. Well, if the fire didn't damage the house, the freaking lake water destroyed the whole house. So sayonara to that. Okay. Fire boats. I mean, who knew? Like, where are you getting this fresh water from? Fresh water, we're taking it right out the lake, buddy. And this thing just ripped the house to shreds. These cannons are firing. I mean, you don't want to get in front of that. So anyway, so when we look at risk management, we look both from a numbers standpoint. We want to see what areas have the best risk. And when I say areas, I mean territories. We're not looking at
Mhm.
neighborhoods. We don't, obviously. We're looking at specific approved territories. And
Okay.
so, whereas some companies might have just zip codes, or they might have the state broken into 30 or 40 territories, we have the state broken into over 1,500 territories.
Wow.
And so, we're a bit more granular. It's very evenly spaced out. And so, we want to get the best risks in those areas. Listen, some people don't have good risks. Their roofs are old. They need to replace them. Like I said, they've got an empty pool that's a risk for a kid to fall in and smash
Hmm.
their head. So you don't want some of those. So you have the data portion that we do with our chief risk officer in that department. And then we have traditional underwriting. Now, people watching this podcast or videocast will know about underwriting. But we go a step further because we use as many tools as we can. One of the things we do is when you put your address, your name and address, and I think a phone number into our system, our quote system, whether you're an agent, whether you're calling us, our 1-800 number, whatever you're doing, and you want to quote, it goes out to 17 different information sources. So
Wow.
we find out, did you have a new roof put on? Have you had prior claims? Do you have a dog? Is your mother's name Joanna? No, we don't do that. But we do all the other things.
Okay.
17, and I'm not exaggerating, different sources of information that
Wow.
populates that. So we can look, and so if you say, well, I don't have a dog. Well, then how come you have a dog license in Broward County, Florida? Or you say you don't have, you never had a pool. How come there's a permit pulled for a pool 2 years ago? And we'll then use the data from some of these great companies that do satellite imagery, not just Google Earth, but companies that do more frequent satellites. And we can look at the back of your house. We can look at the roof from the satellite and see how new your roof is, how old
Wow.
it is, compare it to the state's information or the county's information. So we're able to really look at the risk we're taking, and not just, we love agents and we trust agents, but we trust but verify. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I
Like when
do.
my kids were like, I was at the library. Trust but verify, my friend. You were not at the library. Okay, my
I
friend.
like
You
that.
were out with a six pack, my friend. Now, my older one's 24, so he's allowed to have a six pack. He's old enough. But the point is that when we look at these items, we look at both a data standpoint, which is a whole new
Mhm.
world, and then we look at the actual policy, the actual risk, and we underwrite it old school style by going out to the property, and by new school style by looking at the data and the satellites.
Wow. Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, with Florida Peninsula Insurance Company, what you guys have done and accomplished over the last, 17 years, where do you see the industry and Florida Peninsula moving and evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great. I want a drone to fly me to the office over traffic, because it took me like an hour to get to work today. Okay.
Okay.
South Florida traffic is redunculous. So as far as I'm concerned, I want the executive team to buy all of us drones. Okay. But that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
So in terms of the overall insurance industry, I think it's going to be slow. And I'm not someone who says there's going to be artificial intelligence, um, like within the next year, right? I still think self-driving cars are like not going to happen anytime soon. I'm a little bit of a Ludovite when it comes to those things. It's
Right.
it's always 10 years away. It's
Right.
happening. Right? Like I want my Jetsons airplane. Okay, it's not going to happen right away. There are drones, they will be used, there's computers, etc. But I think with some of the artificial intelligence
Mhm.
work, other than just answering phones, I think an AI adjuster, I think that's farther away. I'm not concerned
Right.
about that during the course of my insurance career. But I think that's in the future. I do think more of that is going to be coming. I think the future has more and more data. I always want to be careful with data because I'm a people person. I want to look at a person's house. I want to look at the risk. I want to look at the person. Do I want to insure that person? Do I
Mm.
want to insure that risk? I don't just want it to be numbers, but you asked. We are heading into a data rich world. And the more that
Wow.
I can get from data, the more that I can find out, who the person is, what their house is like, what prior claims they have, what the earth underneath where they are is like. Is it going to open up into a sinkhole? The
Right.
more that I can find out, the better I can price it. So if you are in an area or you've kept your house really well, you should get a discount. And
Right.
that's what we try to do now. But the data keeps getting better. And so that if
Hmm.
I don't want you to be paying more to me. I don't. People think insurance want to have the highest price. We don't. You know why? You're going to go to your agent and say, "Listen, they're charging me $1,500 a year," and he'll say, "1,500. Let me look. Oh, there's one for 1,200 down the street, another carrier. I just lost a customer. I would
Exactly.
rather keep the customer because the cost of getting that customer is higher than the cost of maintaining a happy customer. So I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure that I have the lowest price at all time, and the better the data I get, which is the future, is going to allow me to offer you, because you, Caleb, are a better risk. He's not a better risk, but theoretically, if you were a better risk, I mean, I know you, and
Right.
I may not want to insure you, my friend, but for the record, we're just kidding, people. But that's my point. I think that's the future. A little bit of AI, a lot of data, but still with the old school touch. You can't get rid of that.
Wow. All right. Excellent. Okay. So, how does your legal team work with other departments within the company, such as underwriting and claims department?
We tell them what to do and they do it because we're legal. We just say, get your butts in gear, people. No, actually, we have we have legal, which is kind of governance and contracts, and
Exactly.
that's the stuff that'll put you to sleep. We have litigation and dispute management. And so if somebody calls us, even if it's very friendly, and says, "Hey, you didn't pay me enough on this," we have a team that will look at that and they will try to resolve it without the need for litigation, appraisal, arbitration, anything. We want people to contact us. We have mediation programs. We have a claims concierge. We want you to call us and try to resolve it. And
Hmm.
so we work litigation as part of the legal department, works with claims in order to resolve those issues beforehand. And so that's a big deal, making sure that we are out in front of it. If somebody calls us, an agent calls us and says, "Hey, I've got a customer, they have a problem," we get on that right away. Okay.
Got it.
We take care of our agents because they're our agents. So we've got about 2,500 agents that are registered to sell Florida Peninsula and Edison policies in the state of Florida. Now, obviously, our customers are not just in Florida because we have snowbirds, people who live elsewhere, people with second homes, whatever it is. And so they don't all live in Florida. In fact, we have international customers, but our policies are in Florida. And so it's really important that we interface with those departments, especially claims. Now, we also interface with special investigations, and what falls under my jurisdiction besides legal, litigation, and claims is the SIU unit, special investigations. And it's funny because, we're Florida Peninsula, so FPI. So if you say it really quickly, "Ma'am, we're with the FPI." If you say it fast, you may get some information,
That's
break
funny.
down a door, FPI, you got to be careful. But, we are Florida, Florida Peninsula. We have a special investigations unit. And the woman who heads that used to work for the state of Florida. She was an investigator and she's been with us for, I'm going to say 10 years. I'm probably getting it wrong. But she oversees a team of about a dozen people, both internal and external investigators. We do surveillance. We investigate people.
Wow.
We tie them up and we tickle them until they tell us the truth. I know I'm going to get in trouble for that somehow. I swear it's not true.
Right.
If someone's watching this, but we do investigate. We're required to, as the state of Florida. We're registered investigators for the state of Florida, myself
Wow.
included, as the kind of the chief of the SIU. But our director, Virginia, she runs this team of about a dozen, and we look at hundreds and hundreds of files every year. We recently had an arrest. I think I don't know when this podcast will come out, but today, early 2023, we had an individual take I believe it was a dry cleaning for like a smoke damage, I want to say, invoice or a receipt, and they just added like a zero.
Oh,
And
wow.
so we called up the dry cleaning place and we said, is this the amount? Because it doesn't seem like that many clothes. And they said, "No, that's not right." And they have that old school. They got like the blue copy and you got the pink copy. They're
Right.
like, the blue copy says this, the pink says this. So we got the guy arrested. I don't like getting people arrested. I prefer people not do that. But the fact is, we have a requirement under Florida law to protect policyholder monies. And no matter what you steal, we're going to have to come after you and get you. So we've got a really active special investigation unit. And so, people, especially college kids who are thinking about a career in law enforcement or criminal justice, they should think about that, because
No
there
kidding.
are all kinds of jobs and special investigations in the insurance field, and it's super fun.
Yeah.
Occasionally you kick down a door. No kicking down doors, but you do investigate, and you do get to sometimes be there for the arrest. And it's, again, I don't like to arrest anybody, but I don't want people stealing innocent people's money either. And it's not,
Right.
again, it's not my money. It's the policyholders' money they've stolen from when they add that zero and pretend like it was 1,000 instead of 100 or whatever the number was. So that's something that we interface with in terms of answering your question. Legal department deals a lot with special investigations. Very exciting, very fun.
Wow. So you do a lot. There's no, you're not just back there pushing papers behind some boring desk. You're in
I
charge of
mostly
a
take
lot of different
naps.
things.
Oh, sorry. I take
That's
naps during the day. That's all I do, is I just take a freaking nap.
right.
You
That's
know what I'm
awesome.
saying?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Here we go.
That sounds
Um,
fun.
so that's what we do here at Florida Peninsula Insurance Company, breaking down proverbial doors, proverbial only. So we're excited about the future. We're excited about the insurance field. Florida's a crazy place to do business, but we're good at it. I mean, I moved here in this 1970s, so from where I was born in California, but I moved here when I was 6. And been here for however many years that is, 50 years. So
That's a
I
long time.
love Florida. I love the people of Florida. I do not like the traffic. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm prejudiced against traffic, but other than that, it's been a great run, and we hope to keep it going, because there really is it's good to do business in Florida, as long as you kind of keep your eye on the ball.
Right. Make sure that you protect your assets. Make sure you don't get too far over your skis, let's say, like some companies have done in the past and end up filing for bankruptcy. But wow, that's really interesting. I really like Florida Peninsula now, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe it's just because you kind of paint a more of a personal picture to it. You guys aren't this big evil company. You're just like you said. You're just trying to watch out for people and protect their best interests at the end of the day.
Yeah, again, when I was a consumer lawyer, I never thought insurance companies were evil, because they're businesses, right? They're neutral.
Right.
But the more I got into the insurance field, I realized that, on the insurance side, we want to help people. We want people to sing our praises. We want to pay exactly what we owe, not more and not less. We want people to compliment us and have a good customer experience, because that's our best sales, our best sales force is our customers. We don't advertise. Florida Peninsula doesn't really advertise. We might
Wow.
sponsor a youth soccer league or something, but you're not going to see really TV ads or billboards. We don't have it. We don't spend the money on that. We don't market, because we market by having the best price, the best service, by having good agents that will sell our policy if it's reasonably priced compared to others and serves the customer's need. But also when people are happy with our service and they're happy with our pricing. You cannot beat that. And so because we don't do that kind of advertising, we're not Progressive or one of these big companies, State Farm, Allstate. They got Geico, even a caveman could do it. I mean, those are great marketing. We do marketing, but it's not like that. It's taking out agents to lunch, and explaining what our newest product is if we have one. That's it. And so we rely on the goodness, or our goodwill, I should say, so that agents and customers, when they do business with us, they say, that was a good experience. And they tell their friends. And then people, like, when they go to their agent, they say, hey, can you take a look at Florida Peninsula or Edison and let me know what their price is, or what their coverages are. And, that's something that we like. And that's how we've grown from, a few $1,000,000 at the beginning to, almost 700 million this
Wow.
year.
That's very different. No, you're absolutely right. Is because these big insurance companies, they literally can spend $1 billion annually just on advertising. And so that tells you something. Where's all your money going? It's going into advertising. And if you guys
Well,
aren't doing that,
no,
that's a different story.
our money's going into my bar tab mostly, but I'm not gonna say it's $1 billion. I'm gonna say it's a few bucks. I'm not gonna lie here. No, I'm just kidding. But it's important that we don't have that kind of luxury. And we're not really in that kind of a marketplace, because even if you do advertise homeowners insurance, it's good for name recognition if you can do that, but it doesn't really get you the customers, because there already is so much competition.
Right.
There's so many different carriers, and there are different policies. Even though people think it's very commoditized, there's a lot of different policies, and some companies will offer you replacement cost coverage on your stuff if it's stolen or if it's lost in a fire. Others will do actual cash value. So those are two different things, and not every company offers exactly the same type of coverage. Some companies will say if your stuff is stolen from your house, it's covered. If it's stolen while you're on vacation, it's not. And you've got
Wow.
to know that. And so,
Yeah.
you might look at something and say, this company is too expensive, but do you want cut rate coverage? We may not always be the cheapest. We try to be, but we always offer a policy that you're not going to call your agent or call us and say, what do you mean that's not covered? My stuff got stolen on vacation. No, we cover your property anywhere in the world. And so it's very important that people understand that. And it does set various carriers apart in the crowded Florida marketplace.
Wow. Wow. That's very impressive. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on here and taking the time out of your day. I know you're very busy, Stacey. So it was really, really nice talking with you. And I'll try to have you on again later, maybe later in the year or next year. We'll try to have you on again.
Anytime. I would love to be here. You have a great podcast, a great show, a great company, and I'm honored to have been asked. So thank you so much, Caleb. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.